Well, we're here in Asheville. Practice this morning already. Um, Guys have done a nice job, just kind of starting to get ready for our first game and getting acclimated to our new setting here. Um, Andrew Jones has passed all of his COVID tests since the other night, so he's good to go. As has all the other players on our team. Knock on wood. So hopefully we will have our full group going into the game tomorrow. Davidson's got a really nice team, very good system, very, very challenging to guard. I think for us, it starts with being in a stance and communicating and just making sure we continue to play and fly around. It's not necessarily about playing a perfect possession on defense. It's about making sure we play through the possession and making sure that we have a relentless effort out there on the court as a group of 5 guys. So that's been a big emphasis. We'll spend some more time the rest of the day preparing for that game at noon tomorrow.
Nick Moyle, go ahead, please, sir.
Yeah, Shaka, just curious, going back and looking at that last game, what were some areas that stood out to you as certain places that y'all want to sharpen over these next few days at the tournament?
Wow, there's so many areas. I think for us, the biggest thing it actually starts before you even get to X's and O's, which is just being really closely connected around our plan. So understanding that, hey, there's things that, an individual player needs to go do, but at the same time, it's also about helping the other guys around you to be the strongest possible group of 5 guys together on the floor. Defensive rebounding is an area we had a good rebounding advantage the other day, but we gave up too many offensive rebounds. So that's an area where we need to be better, something that, we've worked on throughout the preseason, but it's about carrying it over. And Davidson does a nice job with physicality. So we've got to make sure that, we're aggressive on the glass. We got out in transition a good amount. It's really important that we play up tempo and we press the advantage of just being athletic and being long and using our speed in transition. The flip side of that is transition defense. I think we're making some progress with that, but still an area where we need to make a lot of strides. And then, like I said, just defending some different actions in the half court. It's going to be a real challenge. They're very, very good at what they do. They've been doing it for a long time. And so for our guys, it's about communicating, playing in a stance, and again, continuing to fly around.
And then, just on Will real quick, I know we had talked about him a little bit after UTRGV game, but obviously, the news came out, he announced he's intending to transfer. Were there just a couple more conversations that y'all had and just decided that this is the best move for him or sort of how did that come about in the few days since we talked to you?
I mean, it was his decision. Will asked a couple of days before that first game to not play, just to focus on, his development and growth. And that's why I did not put him in the game the other night. But then in our, next practice after that game, he came in and made me aware that, his intention was to transfer. And at the end of the day, he's a great kid. He's a very talented player who, I think has a lot of really, really good things inside of him as a player and as a person. But it was his decision. And, as always, as a coach, you want what's best for a guy and, you want him to be able to follow what he feels is right.
Dustin McComas, go ahead, please, sir.
Yeah, Shaka, considering that normally this time of year you guys have played some closed exhibition games or just have seen another opponent, how did you think you guys responded to just actually playing someone other than yourselves in a game, from maybe the execution standpoint? Did it look like a group that hasn't played somebody else, or were you kind of encouraged with, obviously the scoreboard looked really good, but were you encouraged with these guys' response to seeing somebody else and having that level of competitiveness?
Dustin, I thought our response in terms of our spirit and our togetherness was pretty good throughout the game, especially in the second half after, they scored a few baskets early in the second half. Now, there were certain basketball elements of what you could call a response to what the other team does, where we need to get better. And that's where you saw us playing against, certain things that we hadn't really seen or don't simulate or can't simulate in practice, like a matchup zone. We just don't do that. We can walk through what to do against it. But I thought RGV did a nice job changing defenses. And it was, I don't think we did a great job of, responding to that. I thought our guys made some good plays, but we definitely can get better there.
And offensively, I mean, you guys want to get out in transition, and obviously you had some success doing that with Kai and those guys running the floor. When those things kind of did slow down in the half court, what do you think of the way the guards kind of orchestrated that stuff? And was there some things that stood out, maybe missing Jericho a couple of times when he had position or anything like that in the half court that you guys tried to hit on?
Yeah, with Jericho, it's a tricky one. I mean, this, Dustin. When you throw the ball inside and it gets deflected and stolen, that's a turnover on you as a guard. Mm-hmm. So, some of it's on Jericho as well to make sure that those guys understand, hey, if you throw me the ball, I'm gonna catch it. Mm-hmm. That thing's gonna come into my hands, and I'm just gonna be like a vacuum cleaner. I'm gonna make sure I have it. I thought they did a decent job. I thought Courtney made some really nice plays. Matt, created some good plays, but again, playing against a defense that was a little bit different than what we've seen in practice, a little bit different than what we can simulate, at least live. There's a bunch of areas where we need to get better, starting with our spacing, and that's against any defense, honestly. One of the things we've emphasized a lot in the offseason is cutting, and our guys do a good job of it, but we actually were cutting too much the other night. So, we've got to hold our spacing a little bit better, a little bit more, and then cut at the right times. So that's definitely an area with this next game, next coming several games where we need to improve.
Roger Wallace, go ahead, please.
Hey, Shaka, the importance of 3 games in 3 days. I know it's always big this early just to get games, but in light of, teams scrambling to find games, if they lose games, how big are these 3 games this week?
Yeah, really big. I mean, it's a unique season in that you really don't have any games guaranteed, until you're actually in the game playing. And so, we're on track to play these 3 games. Obviously, you play one at a time. We're putting all of our emphasis and focus into tomorrow. And then, as always in a tournament setting, it's a quick turnaround, but it's a real opportunity for sure. And one that we've talked a lot about as a coaching staff with our team, just the opportunity that's there for us and who we need to be and how we need to be to take advantage of it.
I was going to ask about a potential second game against a particular team, but I won't do that because I know you don't want to look ahead.
Well, we'll let you think about that game since you.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Adam or Josh with KVRX. I see you guys are both together. Go ahead.
Coach, with the Maui tournament, your team will play 3 teams with tournament aspirations. How prepared are your guys physically and mentally to play 40 minutes against quality competition in 3 straight days?
That's a great question. And it's going to be really, really interesting to see that because, we've practiced 3 straight days, but games it's a whole different level of intensity, particularly when you're playing against, this caliber of teams. So, the best I can tell you is we're going to take it one game at a time. We're going to go after this first game, do everything we have to put ourselves in the best position. And then, we've got another game in, roughly 24 hours. So, for us, it's about doing the best job we can to get our bodies back as physically fresh as we can. And then even more so than that, just the mindset, the mental part of it, because once you get to the second game, the third game, nobody's fresh. Nobody's, really well rested. Everybody's a little banged up. And so it's the teams that, have that mental toughness and that mental edge. Those are the teams that have a better chance.
And Coach, looking back at the UTRGV game,
your offense was definitely clicking, but it seemed like the possessions were occasionally leading to turnovers. You had 18 in total. How are you looking to improve some of that going into the Maui, and where every possession there is going to be vital?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, early in the year, I think our guys are still getting to know, how to play, particularly really with Greg being the new guy out there. But it's important that we value the ball for sure, and that's an area where we need to be better. There's different types of turnovers. There's aggressive turnovers where you're going to make a play and for whatever reason it just doesn't work out. But then there's just unforced turnovers that are very, very avoidable, and those are the ones we've got to do a good job preventing.
Got time for two last ones. Nick up first, and then Dustin, please.
Just wanted to ask about, what you thought of Greg's first performance now that you had a little time to look back on it and talk to him. And I'm curious, did you think early on that he was a little over aggressive in searching for shots and buckets? Do you think that was just first game jitters? And do you think going forward he needs to maybe let things develop a little more organically, or do you want him to take that mindset and just maybe approach the shots a little smarter?
Yes and yes. We want him to be aggressive, but we also want him to take the right shots, just like we want everyone on our team to take the right shots. We spend a lot of time talking about the shots we want, which are getting deep in the paint and step in wide open, uncontested threes. Obviously sometimes, especially depending on the shot clock and the situation, you may have to take another type of shot. But that's certainly an area where he's still learning. It's a fine line as a coach. You don't want to necessarily just yank a guy out of the game for taking, one of those that doesn't fall into those categories. But certainly over time, you want your players, even your freshmen, to learn the lessons that, hey, this is what we need for our team. So that's a team conversation. It's an individual conversation. And it's also one where our leadership, the older guys on our team, hopefully can get in his ear and help him understand what we need at the appropriate time. In terms of evaluating his game, I thought for him to have a double-double and be as active as he was without necessarily, playing his best game, that's a good sign, because he's got a lot of areas where he can improve. He's a very receptive kid from the standpoint of after the game, he wants to watch the tape. He wants to learn. He wants to ask, hey, what can I do better? So as I've said all along with him and any other freshman, the big key is, we want him in game 10 to be markedly better than he was in game 1. And so tomorrow's game 2, and our hope is to take a significant step.
Dustin, last one, please.
Shaka, you've got a new looking bench in terms of your assistant coaches. Obviously, Cody getting elevated, hiring KT, a guy like Nevada Smith joining the mix. How did that dynamic work in game 1? And is it kind of just a free flowing exchange of ideas, or do you have a guy that's focusing on offense, whether it's before or during the game, and a guy on defense, or is it kind of just an exchange of, hey, make your voice heard, whether it's offense, defense, whatever?
It's going well. The guys are doing a really good job. Our staff is working really well together, which is a huge point of emphasis this offseason and coming into this year. It's all of us working together, Dustin. It's, different guys have different, skill sets and experience. But at the end of the day, with the relationships that our guys on our staff have, it's just about us sharing information and helping each other help the guys, because that's our job as coaches, is to put the guys in the best position. And if we can work together on that, then we can be the most effective.